What's up guys, it's your Gangster here. Welcome back to another reaction video. Well, I need to get used to saying my name Blue Fury since that's not my name anymore. But I do have my intros to all that junk, so I guess I'll just say that a lot. Anyways, what we're going to be reacting to is a video that is called The Genius of Eren Jaeger's Character. And this is from Attack on Titan, guys, so just so you know. So let's hurry up and get into it. If you guys have not watched it, do not react to this, because surprisingly this will have spoilers. You have been warned, guys.
Eren
Jaeger bomb blasting
is a genius character. Yes, this Eren. Yeah.
We get
Read, shut up.
To me, if Eren Jaeger were a character in any other series, I really wouldn't like him. At the beginning of Attack on Titan, his characterization is very cliche, and he has the mind of a typical shonen protagonist. He has the clear goal to... and his morality starts off as completely black and white. That being, every bad person is inherently evil and will be stopped by the good guys. He's a hot-headed, edgy little shit, and is motivated by his hatred and revenge, and is completely idealistic. Yeah, it's really nothing special. It's one of the reasons why he's one of the most misunderstood and undeservedly hated characters in the series. But the mere fact that he starts off like this is genius, because the world of Attack on Titan isn't a good versus evil story. The world that Eren inhabits is cruel and harsh and doesn't in any way conform to his characterizations. Eren Jaeger is a shonen character in a seinen series. Attack on Titan is filled with insane amounts of moral ambiguity, mind-blowing reveals, and complex characters that completely juxtapose with Eren, which is what makes watching him change throughout the series so interesting. The evidence for this is shown as early as episode 5, when Eren, after years of training, confident in his ability, dead set on his goal of killing all the Titans, has this happen to him.
This guy's legs bit off. At least got one of his legs bit off. Like an idiot.
We see Eren screaming and crying his eyes out whilst he's inside the stomach of a Titan, finding it confusing and unbelievable that he is going to die without killing a single one of them. Eren's ideals were crushed by the cruel world of Attack on Titan. It was at this point I knew this wasn't going to be a show following the conventional shonen rules of storytelling that I was initially led to believe. The fact that Eren's character was specifically written this black and white was definitely a deliberate choice by Isayama. We're already used to the typical shonen protagonist having this just sense of good versus evil. He almost acts as a sort of surrogate for the audience so they can attach to him. But plot twist, in Attack on Titan, those ideals don't mean shit. No, in this cruel world, what really matters in the grand scheme of things is fighting for survival. And watching Eren's character develop and mature into a more pragmatic, complicated, and even morally questionable character is what makes him so geniusly written. Good job, Isayama.
Nice.
Now, before I fellatio the cock of the mangaka so hard I can hardly even pronounce my words, let's try and understand Eren's character development on a deeper level to see why he's so well written into the story. Ah yes, this little shit. Just kidding, he wasn't that bad as a kid. It's not until a few years later he becomes the adorable little incarnation of Edge we all come to love.
Bruh.
Oh, I take that back. Eren starts off as a slightly stubborn kid who hates the idea of... The most interesting thing about him here are his rather wide ambitions and dreams of joining the Survey Corps and seeing the outside world, which was adopted by his friend Armin. This obviously poses conflict with Mikasa and his mother, Carla, as the death rate of the Survey Corps is equivalent to that of the fucking Great Purges in Stalinist Russia. Eren's unwillingness to listen and overall naivety are his major downfalls.
Eren is in trouble.
But despite that, he's a relatively normal kid. Well,
Pretty
I
much.
say that with massive parentheses, as it's not every day a 9-year-old unremorsably stabs a man in the face multiple times.
Especially
I'm willing to defend Eren's actions here, as in his undeveloped black and white mentality, he disassociated himself from the
Black and
killing
white
by
mentality.
rationalizing them as purely evil beasts with no redeeming qualities. Don't get me wrong, his actions were far from normal, and he does showcase some sociopathic traits in his youth, but harming other creatures is something everyone is capable of, as shown by the insect scene. Eren's sense of compassion or empathy wasn't fully developed yet, as, well, he's a kid. So when it was his choice to either fight or escape, his justified anger at the men who killed Mikasa's parents and stole her freedom caused him to fight. Now that I'm done justifying child murder, you can see from early on in the series that Eren's core belief is freedom. Freedom from the walls, freedom to explore the world, and in this case, fighting for Mikasa's freedom. It isn't until the end of the
He
first
said
episode
Mikasa's
when Eren's mother is eaten for this Titan's Dina that Eren has his first major development as a character.
He said Dina.
Okay, so
That's
this version of
hilarious.
Eren lasts until the end of season 2, so pretty
And I
much the
saw what you did
entirety
there.
of
I
the
think I didn't
anime.
notice.
So if you want to see the moments where Eren actually develops into a more interesting character, it's called read the fucking manga. Anyway,
Bruh.
we all know this Eren, the straightforward, obnoxious, and edgy character that's fueled by his desire for revenge, justice, and ambition to change the world. But this is also the part in the story where his simplistic ideals are always challenged by the world and the people around him. Eren seems to be unable to accept that other people have different viewpoints or perspectives, and this makes him push others away. Although I still have to give it to Eren, despite being obnoxious, he is still relatively competent. He managed to become the 5th best trainee in his class, only being beaten by 3 Titan shifters who have already had military training and are fucking superhuman. Despite being reckless, he still charged against the Colossal Titan by
Yes,
himself,
you're
so he
controlling.
was pretty
Ooh.
badass at times. However, a lot of times he did treat Mikasa like shit for no real reason other than he was
If you
jealous
guys
of
hear
her,
my controller going
and
off,
his
well,
terrible
technically all
teamwork
you
and
really
judgment
have to do
essentially
is
led
just
to the deaths
listen.
of his entire squad.
I'll let him stop for a second. If you hear my controller going off in the background, it's because I'm just playing a game while I'm listening. Because technically, I've seen all these clips that he has in there, so I'm just listening. Y'all can watch and listen at the same time. For me, I'm listening.
Now, once Eren realizes he's a Titan
I'ma try
shifter,
my- I'ma
it
try my
shows the
best to be
first sense
silent
of
as frick,
pragmatism we see in his character. He hates Titans with everything he has, but is one himself.
No, he's
And
able to
he
turn
never
into
hates
one.
himself for that. This shows that his interest in killing all the Titans is less for his selfish revenge and more to benefit humanity as a whole. This is shown in his trial where he literally tells everyone, including all the military leaders within the walls, just to leave it to him, so humanity can prevail. However, at this point Eren still has to learn a crucial lesson. Rage doesn't work in his favour.
Exactly.
His first fight with the female Titan was disastrous. He gets beaten, captured, and ended up being saved by Levi, but at the cost of him being unable to walk for a short while. Eren is determined to kill the female Titan without hesitation, simply because she's a bad guy and must be destroyed. But once it's revealed that Annie is in fact the enemy he's been fighting, he straight up denies it. Like, in Eren's mind, it makes no sense that one of the few people he got along with in the training camp was a mass murderer. This major act of betrayal is the first time Eren's worldview is properly challenged. This is a huge difference from Kid Eren, as despite Annie being arguably morally worse than the child kidnappers, he doesn't immediately demonize Annie like he does to them. It's obvious Eren had a lot of compassion for Annie, which results in him being unable to initially transform into a Titan in their second fight, as he still can't comprehend that Annie is capable of these horrible acts. Or maybe it's because the thought of fighting someone he genuinely cares about hurts. Let's just ignore the crazy Eren berserker mode in the anime because it contradicts that rage doesn't work in his favour, but in the original source material, the manga, Eren gets beaten by Annie again, but by working with the others around him, they successfully capture her. But then a day later he gets betrayed again.
Exactly.
Turbo, bro!
You see, at this point, it's just the beginning of the mindfuckery Eren has to go through. In the timeline of Attack on Titan, Eren's only realised that he's been a Titan shifter for 1 month when he fights Annie, which is practically nothing in comparison to Annie, Bertolt and Reiner, who've been training for years. Eren so far has only used Rage as a battle technique, and we all know how useful that was. Then, only a couple of days after he finds out that Annie was the female Titan and fights her, it's revealed that Reiner and Bertolt were the armoured and colossal Titans. The fact that Bertolt, and particularly Reiner, who Eren has held in such high esteem and even considered to be a brother, has betrayed him, makes this one of the most impactful moments in Eren's life.
Yeah.
People he genuinely considered to be comrades were actually the people who caused the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people, and more importantly, Eren's mother, whose death was the source of his rage. However, this point in time also marks a very important difference. Initially and understandably, Eren is blinded by rage, and it's evident that it doesn't work out for him as he gets demolished by Reiner. However, whilst Eren's on the floor with his head bashed in and barely being able to stand up, he realises something very important. The ability to use what he learnt from his enemies and use it back at them. This is important as, for the first time, Eren actually keeps his composure in a fight, listens to his peers, and uses actual fighting technique. I think that the challenging experience he went through with Annie's betrayal just a few days prior, as well as the evidence presented a few hours before the reveal, genuinely helped Eren overcome his blind rage and not make the same mistake he did at Wolcina. And guess what? It works out for him. This was an important development to his character as, when Eren actually kept his composure, he gains the upper hand in the fight, and if it weren't for Bertolt's intervention, he might have even beaten Reiner in combat. Now we get to the forest scene, which I believe is one of the most crucial points for Eren's development, as he starts to realise just how big of a lie he's been living in. At the start of the scene, Eren is completely unable to understand both Reiner and Bertolt's perspectives and motivations, and therefore aims all his built-up hatred and rage towards these characters. He promises them a slow and agonising death, as, in his black and white mentality, they are irredeemably evil enemies that must be destroyed. And to an extent, he's right. They both cause the deaths of countless amounts of people. But Eren's vengeful outbursts cause Ymir to take Reiner and Bertolt's side. At this point, there was a massive toll on Eren's mind, as his comrades were all being outed as the very beings he vowed to kill, and it was like his entire world was being flipped upside down. Eren's reaction towards Reiner and Bertolt was strong because he initially cared about them so much, and for them to be the cause of his misery for years puts him through mental turmoil. What also makes the exchange more interesting is the role Ymir plays. She doesn't think of Reiner or Bertolt as enemies and loses faith in Eren because he's, quote, talking like some stupid kid. She sees the futility of how he's acting and how pointless his actions are, stating that she doesn't know who the true enemies are. In fact, the cruel world itself is the enemy. This reinforces the point that what really matters in the grand scheme of things is fighting for survival, not the grandiose idea Eren has of killing all the completely evil enemies. Even if Eren killed Reiner and Bertolt there, he is completely naive to believe the conflict would somehow end, and Ymir understands this. Okay, so the point in the story where Eren confronts the Smiling Titan is what I regard as the death of Eren Jaeger as we know him. All his past trauma has accumulated into this one point. In the span of a few days, he's been betrayed, beaten, and characters such as Hans have literally died in front of him. Eren's spirit at this point was broken. He breaks down as he believes he's still the same useless kid that he always was. But like Mikasa has for most of his life, she supports Eren, and her words really resonate with him, enough to give him that final push of motivation that ended up saving both of their lives. At this point, Eren truly values the importance of people in his life and the relationships he has, particularly for Mikasa. Rather than pushing others away and running ahead, he treats people with more respect, and as a result his relationships develop. Besides from his love for Mikasa, I guess you could say that was a Titanic rejection.
Bruh!
Got him.
Hey, can I get out of this, please?
So this newly developed version of Eren takes place in the manga after season 2, so if you're an anime only, keep in mind that there will be some manga spoilers. Okay,
Exactly, y'all.
now that all the anime onlys are gone, all the people that are still watching this should be manga readers, or anime watchers who thought, fuck it, I still want to be spoiled anyway. At this point in the story, Eren feels the burden of the vast amount of people who have sacrificed their lives for him. This causes him to develop a sort of superiority complex to cope with the deaths, stating that they were an unavoidable event. This is an interesting development, as beforehand Eren would most likely complain and become depressed at the lives lost because of him. But with the help of John, Eren comes to understand the true weight on his shoulders and the value of his life. And this gives him all the more reason to push forward and fight for humanity's sake, as they're all relying on him. I mean, the fact that Eren even thanked John for pointing this out in the first place is enough evidence that he's a changed person. That is, until people keep dying for him. The realization that he's an important person for humanity actually begins to continually wear him down as more sacrifices are being made, leading to a deeper and deeper hole of depression as the series goes on. This is until he fully breaks down in chapter 65.
What?
Eren gives up. The flame of revenge and drive for freedom has all but died out at this point. As he's faced with his father's sins of killing the Rice family and stealing the founding titan, Eren comes to the realization that he is not a special person at all, and fully believes all those deaths for him were in vain. The burden on his shoulders becomes too heavy for him to carry, as Eren himself states that he cannot atone for the deaths of everyone in Squad Levi, the residents of the Stohess district, the countless soldiers that have tried to rescue him, Hans, his own father, and many others. He gives up on his dream and truly believes that the events in the past 5 years were all his fault. In order to end his misery, he tells Historia to eat him, masking it in the fact that it will save humanity. However, unknowingly to Eren, emerging from this depression and utter breakdown would be the symbol of hope he's been aiming to become this entire time. Freed from his captivity, Historia pretty much calls Eren out. She was envious of his ability to move forward in the face of adversity, as he always knew what he wanted to achieve. With the roof collapsing and time running out until they're eventually crushed to death, Eren is once again forced to make an arduous decision. Whether to believe in the power of his friends, or trust in his own power. We saw the consequences of him not believing in his own strength last time this happened with the female titan, so Eren takes a risk. In the end, he miraculously saved his friends from immediate death by putting faith in his own ability and being willing to bear the burden and actually handle it with confidence this time. Even after the events in the chapel, Eren is still at his lowest mental state, lamenting that he feels sorry for humanity that their savior is him. This is a complete reversal of when he believed he was somehow special, and he realizes that he's just a normal person who was dragged onto this bloody path. His powers were special, not him. But at this moment, he also comes to another realization. He thinks of the past, the death of his mother, and the countless others fighting for humanity's survival. And he literally punches himself in the face to get rid of the, quote, brat that's been shackling him all this time. It's at this point he can finally build himself up to be humanity's savior. Unlike Eren's reckless attitudes before in the story, he now has a sense of confidence and resolve in his actions. This resolve is reinforced when he states in a calm manner that if he confronts Reiner or Bertolt, it is simply his duty to kill them. This shows that Eren has finally learned to push his hatred aside and keep his composure. Instead, he uses that hatred as motivation to become stronger, so he can carry the burden of having this special power, even though he is not a special person. Eren's character is now almost the complete opposite of how he was in the first 2 seasons, and it took him all this time to realize the only reason he got this far was because of the lessons given to him by other people. Chapter 72 shows this, as for once he actually agrees with John and accepts his opinions, And rather than pushing Mikasa away like he has most of the series, he openly admits that he was jealous of her ability and accepts her help. His personality has changed due to a mix of the grim trials he's had to endure, but also the support he's been given from the people he admired. And, ironically, the most important lesson he's been given was from the person he hated the most, Reiner. In order to achieve our goals, we have no choice but to push forward and fight for it with all we've got. I may actually make a video in the future on Eren and Reiner's relationship, as it's honestly one of the most interesting parts of the story for me, but that's for another time. Anyway, when Eren finally fights Reiner once more, it is the ultimate testament to the development he's been through. Eren, even though he hates Reiner more than anyone else, keeps his anger in check, and is therefore able to showcase his true power. By keeping his composure and working with others, his judgment is no longer clouded, and as a result he beats Reiner in combat. When fighting the Colossal Titan, he puts his trust and faith in Armin's plan and keeps his composure, even though he knows that Armin will most likely die as a result of it. He accepts Armin's sacrifice in order to defeat Bertolt, as Eren knows it will be a massive step for humanity. He even completely accepts Armin's death. That is, until he's given a slither of hope. So the moment known as Serum Bowl is arguably one of the most controversial moments in the entire series. It's at this moment where Eren temporarily regresses into his old self, but it's understandable. Eren finally completely understands Armin as a person. This entire time, Armin wasn't fighting to take revenge or kill all the Titans like Eren was. He simply wanted to see the ocean, to have freedom. Eren truly values Armin's dream, as he can resonate with the idea of freedom. When Levi shows up with a serum that can heal Armin, in Eren's perspective, he needs to do everything he can to selfishly ensure his survival, even if it means fighting against others to prevent Erwin from having the serum. I'm not going to say who I thought rightly deserved the serum, as it might cause a shitstorm in the comments, but I can understand why Eren acted in his old childish and selfish ways. Even though afterwards Armin even himself admits he shouldn't have been the one chosen to survive, it's extremely obvious Eren is trying to justify to others, but mostly to himself, why Armin was the right choice. This shows that Eren's older and more selfish traits from his youth will always accompany him. After all, it's impossible to become a completely different person, but I believe this humanizes Eren more. He's changed and evolved into a more confident and collected person who's more understanding of others, but he's still Eren Jaeger. Eren is now finally able to take on the basement. Obviously, learning about the truth of the world in Attack on Titan was mind-fucking enough for the reader, so I can't even imagine how it would be for Eren. Once he begins to gain the memories of the predecessors of the Attack Titan through his father Grisha and Eren Kruger, it actually begins to massively damage his mental health. He finds it more difficult to discern reality from the past, and this results in random outbursts that are noted by the people around him. The fact that most of what he's fought for and believed has been a lie this entire time places a deep, irreplaceable mental scar on himself. This is beautifully represented when the Survey Corps finally reached the ocean 9 months after the basement reveal. You see, the ocean was supposed to be the accumulation of all their achievements, a sort of endgame for what they were all fighting for. The Titans were all defeated, they reclaimed Wall Maria, and everyone was celebrating as they finally achieved the freedom they've all been fighting for. But Eren, our main character, can't even muster up any happiness. Were all the physical trials and mental torture he's been through truly worth it this entire time? Because of his newfound insight, he realizes that all history has been this entire time is just a meaningless cycle of bloodshed. He knows fully well that right now, the conflict is nowhere near its end. He is no longer naive.
Oh, there's a time play right there.
The true price for their freedom is much greater, with the entire world standing against them.
I'm goated. There's an entire
Holy shit, I do not care what anyone says. This version of Eren is by far my most favourite in the series.
Facts.
And he's solidifying himself as one of my favourite main characters.
He reminds me of Captain Levi a lot.
If we just look at Eren physically, he's almost unrecognisable to his old self. Although, as of this video, he's only been shown in the story from chapter 93 to chapter 102. This time skip version of Eren is by far the most pragmatic, mature and ruthless version of his character to date. In fact, his actions are so controversial I'd even go as far to call him an anti-hero at this point. His extreme moral complexity is just not what you'd ever expect from his character when you start watching the series. So far he's been unnaturally good at keeping his composure, and for a character whose main issue was succumbing to anger, this marks a massive change as he's matured into an adult. Eren's goals at the moment are a lot more unclear and ambiguous, but they can be interpreted to be similar to the ones he had when he was younger. Protecting his friends and those he cares around him, and fighting for freedom. However, the difference now is that Eren is a lot more ruthlessly pragmatic and morally grey to achieve those goals. He is willing to be ethically wrong in order to achieve what he, in his opinion, perceives to be the greater good. Eren is no longer fighting against just the Titans, but the twisted and corrupt society all around the world, and even the cycle of history itself. This draws many similarities to the Attack Titan's predecessor, Eren Kruger, who did countless amounts of morally questionable things by torturing and transforming Eldians into Titans. But he was willing to bear the burden of his sins in order to set the wheels in motion to stop the persecution of the Eldian race. He did it all for the greater good. It's obvious that the memories of the Attack Titan have affected Eren's development, and it can be said that he's carrying all the hatred from the previous Titan shifters. Eren is also a ridiculously amount more understanding and almost forgiving of Reiner. The most obvious evidence of his development is when you look at the last conversation they had. Eren looks directly at Reiner and states, "It is my mission to see you die the most excruciating death possible." Those words obviously shook Reiner to the core, and when they meet again and speak for the first time in years, that's what Reiner thinks Eren is here for. After a short pause, Eren's reply is simply, "Oh, did I say that? Pretend I didn't then." Eren openly talks about his mother's death, which Reiner caused, and calls out the parallels between both of them, stating that this whole time it was painful for you, wasn't it? I think I understand that now. And guess what? Just before he begins his attack after Willie's declaration of war, he still follows Reiner's advice that he gave him years ago. In order to achieve our goals, we have no choice but to push forward and fight for it with all we've got. I think we were born this way. I just keep moving forward. There isn't really much more I can say about Eren's development because well, from his dialogue alone, it's evident that he's a completely changed person. But even then, him crushing and eating Willy Tybur, killing countless military officials and civilians, and keeping his composure against the monstrous Warhammer Titan is evidence enough that he's by far the most ruthless, pragmatic and morally ambiguous he's ever been. Throughout his fight with the Warhammer Titan, he constantly kept his composure, analysed the situation, and didn't so much as flinch when he was seconds away from being killed. He quickly found the whereabouts of the Warhammer shifter and fully intended to devour her, showing that he's much more of an effective warrior. Eren, as the holder of the founding Titan, has the hatred of the entire world now focused on him. And even so, he is willing to bear that burden and move forward. Eren still now has character flaws, but throughout the story he's fixed the majority of them to adapt to this cruel world. He is a normal person with special powers who was thrown onto a road of hardship, betrayal and despair. The burdens he's had to carry were forced onto his shoulders. To be humanity's hope, to fight for freedom, and now to save the Eldian race from the entire world. The fact that the arrogant, immature and straightforward Eren at the start of the series develops into such an understanding, ruthless and morally complex character is testament to his fantastic character journey in writing. For a protagonist that was hated for being so generic and arrogant, to eventually be shaped by the world and people around him into someone much more complex is the genius of Eren Jaeger's character.
all this junk he had to go through. Like, Eren Jaeger is a good person, yes, but like ever since like season 4, when he's now a pre-adult, he just became such a ruthless.
Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, I'd really
anything.
like to say smash that motherfucking like button, but
Dude!
studies show that saying that gives 1 in 10 viewers cancer, so I'm just gonna say I'd greatly appreciate it if you liked the video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos, and follow me on Twitter, where I normally shitpost but may say the odd occasional thing of actual value. Thanks for watching.
Alright, so the whole thing about Eren is just that he became a whole new person. I'm just gonna say that straight to butt. Eren became a whole new person. I just like, at first in season 1 he was okay. I'll say that. Season 2, season 3, he was a lot better. And oh, and about his whole Titan thing, I did love how when he's in his Titan body, you can hear like a slight difference in his voice. That's one thing I do like about his Titan. And his Titan is actually a pretty cool looking Titan, if I do say so myself. And so, yeah, I guess